Okay, this is a section on advanced searching. We're going to go through everything from types of databases, subject browsing, Boolean searching, using fielded searches, and compiling synonyms during the search process. Because we have already covered narrowing your search terms, your topic, because we have already covered that. I'm not going to cover that in detail here. Another aspect we've covered before is something having to do with multidisciplinary databases versus subject-based searching. That is going to be covered later as well. But just in short, I do recommend, if you're starting your search, going with a multidisciplinary database. These are like EBSCO, Academic Search Complete, MyWilson. These are often across databases and often across subject areas as well. The reason you want to start with this is if you don't know your subject area very well, you want to explore, and these are good databases for doing that. The other option is discipline-based or subject-based databases. Now, just to show you where they are on the page, for UB libraries, to go to specific databases, which is the one you would want to start with if you knew your subject area very well, you would go with resources by subject. And then it gives you a series of subject-based databases. So do you want a database in art and architecture, business, earth and environmental sciences, social sciences? We go through some of that in the part called critically evaluating your sources. But a good place to start if you don't know the subject area is Best Basic Resources, which takes you to, and that is on the home page on the Quick Links column, and that takes you to journal articles, which are databases of scholarly material, most of which are multidisciplinary. Academic Search Complete is a good one to start with. We're going to continue doing the subject of capital punishment. Now, one thing you want to do if you're starting and you haven't narrowed the topic is to go to subject and article browsing for terms. Subject browsing is subject terms at the top, which is the same thing as a thesaurus. Those are indexing terms. You want to figure out the language of the database. So related to capital punishment, what are the terms used to index the articles? What's related to capital punishment? Type in capital punishment in the browsing section under the blue bar there. Make sure to go for relevance ranked, not terms begin with. Relevance brings up anything having to do with capital punishment. It doesn't have to start the indexing term. So capital punishment is one. Punishment. Under capital punishment, what is mentioned? Under capital punishment. Under capital punishment, you will find death row. That's an associated or related term. So we can then use that in a search, an advanced search, because we know those terms are related. Another way to find that material is through a visual search, which I showed you on the narrowing your search terms part. You just have to type in your term again, capital punishment, and it will come up with a filing cabinet of associated terms or subject areas. This is a more visual way of looking at the same thing that the thesaurus search was, the subject search. It's just a more visual way of seeing it. And if you look up punishment, moral and ethical parts, what is it under? Punishment. There it is, death row. So death row is an associated term. So going back to the advanced search, we want to actually use these subject terms. The point of doing subject searches is to find out what terms are associated with each other, what indexing terms you can use for searches. Believe me, a keyword search starting out is usually fruitless, especially with a broad term like capital punishment. So capital punishment and death row. Now I want to go through just briefly Boolean search terms. The first one is and. And is used most often, and I recommend that one the most. It's used to combine related terms that you want to see in all the articles that come back from your search. So we want to find articles that mention both capital punishment and death row. We could have used that as a subject search, but we used it as a search all fields instead. Now looking through here, you can also see what your returns are and what ones interest you. Resumed innocent and the Innocence Project, having to do with innocent people being convicted to the death row. But going down, just scanning the subject terms used to describe these documents, I see a few having to do with DNA evidence. What we can do then is combine the terms into one search. Capital punishment, death row, and DNA. This will bring back fewer documents. Right now I have 709 results. It will also show you that a lot of research has been done on just DNA research and its impact on capital punishment. And again, this is actually a more recent topic area, so it's actually better for this kind of, if you're doing a research paper on capital punishment, DNA is a more recent, current topic area. We get 53 results with DNA, death row, and capital punishment. So you get a much more limited outlook, a much more limited results this way than just free text searching. Other Boolean terms are not. If you see articles that have the same search terms, if you see irrelevant articles that all have this one subject in them, not is a good way of getting rid of something. So if you're seeing irrelevant documents, right now I found one called Legal Status. Legal status was mentioned in an article having to do with California state laws. Now if I'm getting a bunch of statewide laws related to death row, I want to get rid of those. Now I can put in capital punishment, death row, not legal status, and that will get rid of many of the documents. And you can even put subject terms, because it is a subject term, and you will get a lot fewer documents that way. I would recommend not using that term a lot, that not Boolean operator. Don't use it a lot, because you never know what's associated with each other. You might be limiting your results too much that way. The last one is or. Or is used for synonyms. If you want DNA or genetic, those both could have been synonyms for each other. So you want to find more results. You don't want to just find DNA, but you want to find other documents that might just say genetic research but not DNA. So it expands your search to use or. I would recommend using and or the most often. But personally speaking, I use and more than any other Boolean operator. Another thing I want to mention is fielded searching. Fielded searching means that you actually use the fields that they give you. So keyword searches are a way to expand your results, because it searches for keywords in title, abstract, and the actual document, and that will produce more results for you. Words in title, these limit the results. Say I want to go with death row as a keyword search, or you could do subject search, death row in a subject search, and DNA in the title, because DNA actually doesn't show up in the subjects, but it would show up in the title of something, and DNA is a very common term used. So I want just articles having to do with the subject of death row and articles with the title DNA. When I do that search, I only get 7 results. 7 results, and if you try different databases, you might come up with different articles. You can also try words in an abstract. If you find that DNA isn't mentioned, maybe genetic research is mentioned in an abstract. Nothing found there, but you will find that. It's just an option. It's better to do abstract searches after you've looked at the abstracts of the articles you get back. A lot of this is playing around with what you're getting. The last one is all fields. All fields is the best one to use in a way, because it's the actual search engine of the database does the job for you, and it will automatically search for subject first. So it actually doesn't matter in a way if you have a subject. If you present all fields, the algorithms of the search engine will do the job for you. So those are some fielded searches you can do. They're the most common. Other ones I don't ever do, and I don't know many people that do it. One last thing I wanted to talk about was you need to compile synonyms or alternate terms as you do a search. And if you go to the link creating groups of synonyms and alternate terms, you'll see how to do this. It looks complicated, but really you can do it by copying and pasting too. As you run into documents that have these synonyms, you can copy and paste the terms and put them in a Word document. I do recommend putting them on paper though, instead of trying to remember them in your head. So you compile them by groups. If you see here, group 1 is subjects: death row, death penalty, and capital punishment, all subjects. Group 2 is keywords. Now these could be in the title of a document or the abstract. DNA spelled out, which I can't, deoxyribonucleic acid, which might be used. Genetic and fingerprinting, all keywords that mean the exact same thing. Group 3, keywords that mean the same thing again. These are not subjects and haven't even been mentioned as descriptors. Innocent, victims, and inmates. They're often mentioned in abstracts or titles of a document. So those are some ways to compile a list of synonyms. Try to group them together so you see similar groups all meaning one thing. Then you can just alternate between them. If you see the bottom of the page, I did this. Death row and DNA. Death row and deoxyribonucleic acid. Death row and genetic, all meaning the same thing. So these are some ways to do advanced searching. First, you have to browse the area to figure out what subjects and keywords to use. Then you do the actual Boolean searching. Then you use fielded searches if you feel like it, which is a good way to expand or limit your results. And lastly, this is kind of an ongoing thing to compile the list of synonyms. You're going to have to do that all the time, because as you go along, you should be playing with your search terms. You never know actually what you're going to run across, so try everything.